This audiobook is not a map, nor a method, nor a teaching. It is a quiet return to the space that breathes you, the place before striving, before identity, before the story of who you think you are. It is not interested in who you were or who you hope to become. It speaks only to what remains when all effort ends. You have searched through thoughts, followed practices, read words, chased silence, and all along, the stillness waited. It waits not in some distant light, but here, beneath the pulse of this breath, behind the motion of your mind, within the soft awareness watching now. This is not a journey of addition. It is an unlayering, a peeling back of everything borrowed until only the original presence remains. You are not here to become. You are here to remember. You are not the breath. You are the space that breathes. Chapter 1. The first silence. Before the naming, before even breath itself, there was silence. Not the absence of sound, but a presence so still it could not be grasped. That silence was not something you entered into. It was you. It held no edge, no beginning, no awareness of being separate. In that first silence, there was no self and no other, no direction and no goal. There was only being, uncontained and immeasurable. The first silence was not experienced through the mind. The mind had not yet risen. It had not divided the world into this and that, into me and you. It had not called anything better or worse, beautiful or ugly, spiritual or mundane. The silence was whole, complete. It did not need to know itself to be itself. And yet, it was all things. When attention first began to narrow, it moved like a ripple across that vast quiet. It began to look, to turn, to identify. And in that movement, the first illusion was born. The idea that what was once whole could now be seen as parts. The silence did not resist this. It did not object or struggle. It simply allowed. And in that allowance, the play of form began. Time unfolded. Space unfolded. Thought took shape. But none of this ever left the silence. It all appeared within it, as it, through it. You did not fall from truth. You never left the silence. But your attention became fascinated by movement, by identity, by becoming, and so the dream of separation began. You learned to name the self, to seek, to fear, to long for something lost. You built your sense of reality upon the echo of what you forgot, but the silence remained, unchanged, unmoved, holding every moment of forgetting within its infinite patience. It did not punish. It did not call you back. It simply waited, as it always does, until you were quiet enough to feel its presence again. The silence was never far. It was never distant. It was never missing. It is not something found in retreat or ritual. It is here, in the pause between thoughts, in the breath that asks for nothing, in the space you overlook while trying to become. The silence was not broken by your questions. It was not hidden by your doubts. It was only obscured by the belief that you are something separate from it. And now, in this moment, as the words fade and the mind softens, that silence rises again. Not as a memory, but as what is truly here. It has no need to announce itself. It speaks without sound. It embraces without form. It is not something you access. It is something you are. When you rest in it, you do not become still. You realize you were never moving. You do not become whole. You remember you were never broken. In the stillness of this presence, you are not a role, not a past, not a future. You are not the story you've told, nor the identity you've protected. You are the openness in which all stories appear and dissolve. You are the clear sky that does not mind the passing clouds. You are the unshaken center around which all change dances. The first silence is not a thing of the past. It is not something that was lost. It is the ground beneath every moment. It is the constant behind every thought. It is what allows each sound to be heard, each sensation to be felt, each word to arise. You cannot escape it. You can only forget to notice it. And when you do, you suffer. Not because the silence has gone, but because your attention is elsewhere. Return now, not with effort, but with ease, not by fixing, but by relaxing, not by becoming, but by letting go of becoming. The silence is not earned. It is remembered. It is not an achievement. It is your origin, the place you never truly left. It is the unshaped awareness before you were shaped by the world. It is the space that breathes you, lives you, moves you. And so, nothing more needs to be added. Not to this moment. Not to you. The silence does not seek improvement. It welcomes you exactly as you are. It holds the noise and the calm, the joy and the sorrow, the seeker and the search. It holds them all without judgment, without resistance, without the need to explain. Because it knows that all of it is temporary, and it knows that you are not. This is the first silence, not something that began long ago, but something that is beginning now, in your attention, in your noticing, in your willingness to stop running, stop naming, stop trying to become. The silence is not an experience. It is what allows every experience. It is not a moment of peace. It is what watches even when peace is absent. It is time to stop pretending you are something other than this. It is time to stop delaying your return with more seeking, more striving, more spiritual stories. There is no path back to the silence, because the silence never moved. It is you who moved. It is you who reached. It is you who turned your gaze away. But now, you are here. And here is enough. Here is the end of separation. The end of becoming. The end of the story. The silence that held you before the first word still holds you now. And it always will. Chapter 2. Beneath the thought of you. Long before the thought of who you are took root, there was simply presence. No name, no definition, no story. The idea of you had not yet been constructed, and yet you were. Not as an individual, not as a personality, but as pure awareness, untouched by time or memory. What you truly are has no edges, no identity, no weight. It is not a person. It is the space in which the person appears. You are not the content of consciousness. You are the consciousness itself. The thought of you began to form early. A name was given. A role was taught. You learned to recognize your reflection and call it me. You were praised and corrected, shaped by words, by gestures, by rewards and consequences. Slowly, a picture was built. A self-image, reinforced by every experience, and you believed it, as you were meant to. The human story requires a sense of self to function. But beneath that structure, something quiet remained. Something that did not believe or disbelieve, did not rise or fall, did not gain or lose. That something is your original nature. The mind took over quickly, organizing reality through contrast. I am this, not that. I feel this, not that. I believe this, not that. The structure grew more complex. Layers of identity were added until the pure light of awareness was almost entirely veiled. But even while veiled, it never disappeared. It continued to hold every thought, every experience, every emotion. It waited without waiting. It remained without effort. You are not who you think you are. You are what sees the thinking. You are not your beliefs. You are what holds belief and doubt equally. You are not your past. You are the awareness in which every memory arises and dissolves. You are not the seeker. You are what the seeker is looking from. Beneath the thought of you is the vastness that does not come and go. It is not improved by success. It is not diminished by failure. It is already whole. The thought of you is not wrong. It is part of the play. It gives context to experience. But suffering begins when the thought of you is mistaken for what you are. When the story becomes the substance. When the role becomes the reality. And so the invitation is not to destroy the mind, but to see it clearly. To watch the thought arise, this is who I am, and to recognize it as just another ripple on the surface of something much deeper. That deeper space is not an altered state. It is not a spiritual accomplishment. It is always present. You touch it every time you pause between thoughts. Every time you rest without needing to explain. Every time you listen to the breath without naming it. These moments are not rare. They are constant. But they are overlooked, because the mind is always searching for something more. To rest beneath the thought of you is not to disappear. It is to become fully available. Available to life, without the filter of identity. Available to others, without the defense of persona. Available to yourself, without the distortion of judgment. You meet each moment not from a story, but from presence. And in that presence, everything is allowed. Joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, form and formlessness. There is nothing to reject because there is nothing to protect. The thought of you is always busy. It worries, compares, plans, regrets. It wants to be seen, understood, validated. It wants to matter. And there is tenderness in that. But you do not need to follow it. You can let it move like a cloud across the sky of your awareness. You can watch it appear and dissolve without clinging, without resisting. You do not need to fix it. You do not need to silence it. You only need to stop mistaking it for yourself. In the silence beneath thought, you are not personal. You are universal. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. You are not the noise. You are the stillness that receives all sound. And this realization does not separate you from life. It immerses you in it. You no longer see others as separate minds, but as expressions of the same awareness. You no longer feel isolated, because the boundary that kept you apart was never real. Beneath the thought of you, there is nothing lacking. No hole to fill. No image to maintain. No version of yourself to live up to. There is only this breath, this presence, this unmoving ground beneath all motion. It does not need to be known. It simply is, and you are it. Come back now, gently. Not through effort, but through honesty. Through the willingness to let the image of yourself fall away, even for a moment. Let go of trying to be someone. Let go of trying to understand. Let the thoughts come and go, and feel what remains. That is not a thing. That is not an experience. That is what you are. Not a self. Not a soul. Not an idea. Just this. Just presence. Just the awareness in which the thought of you arises and passes. And when the thought returns, as it will, smile at it. Welcome it without believing it. Let it be part of the dance. Let it play its part, knowing it is not the whole. You do not need to get rid of anything. You only need to see. And what you will see is that there is no true boundary between inside and outside, self and other, subject and object. There is only awareness appearing as all things and watching itself in every form. You are not hidden. You are not waiting to be revealed. You are the space beneath the thought of you. And that space is here now. It always has been. It always will be. Chapter 3. The place where all paths end. Every path begins with a longing, a yearning to find, to fix, to become. You take the first step because something in you believes there is something else, something greater, something more complete, and so the path forms. It carries the shape of seeking meaning, seeking peace, seeking truth. Sometimes it wears the clothes of religion, sometimes philosophy, sometimes silence and stillness. But all paths, no matter how different they appear, are born of the same ache, the desire to return. Along the way, you collect teachings, practices, insights, names for what you experience. You build understanding. You taste glimpses of stillness. You fall, you rise, you move forward. Or so it seems. And all the while, the path stretches before you like a promise. Just a little further. Just one more realization. One more shift, and you'll arrive. One more layer released, and you'll be free. The path becomes your identity. The seeker becomes your role. And the goal becomes your hope. But what if the path itself is the final illusion? What if there is nowhere to go? What if the movement that carried you this far was only meant to exhaust itself, to bring you to the edge of becoming and leave you with nothing but what is? There is a place where all paths end. It is not far. It is not hidden. It is not a sacred peak waiting for the worthy. It is this moment, this breath, this unadorned now, where the need for progress dissolves. At the end of the path, there is no fanfare, no final teaching, no enlightened version of you waiting with open arms. There is only space, silence, presence. There is the falling away of effort, the absence of trying, the dropping of becoming. And in that absence, something strange happens. The one who walked the path begins to fade. The seeker becomes transparent. The idea of getting somewhere disappears. And what remains is what has always been. You may resist this ending. The identity of the one on the journey is strong. It has given you purpose, orientation, even comfort. To let it go feels like death. And in a way, it is. The death of the spiritual persona. The death of the imagined arrival. The death of the illusion that you are incomplete. But this death is not loss. It is return. It is the gentle dissolving of what was never needed. Here, there is no technique, no special state, no altered experience. There is only being. Ordinary. Still. Alive. And you begin to see that what you were searching for was not a thing to be found. It was the absence of searching. It was what you were looking from, not what you were looking for. It was the stillness beneath the movement, the silence beneath the seeking, the presence beneath the seeker. The place where all paths end is not another destination. It is the collapse of destination altogether. It is where direction loses meaning, where time no longer applies, where the moment is not on the way to anything else. You do not land here. You dissolve here, not in despair, but in peace, the peace of nothing needing to happen. This place is not empty. It is full beyond measure, full of what cannot be spoken, cannot be grasped, cannot be owned. It does not offer you a better version of yourself. It offers you freedom from the self that needed to be better. It does not offer you control. It offers you rest. Not rest as escape, but rest as truth. You see that you never needed the path to get here. You were here before the first step. You were here before the search began. And now that the path has ended, everything continues. But it moves differently. Not as striving, but as flowing. Not as seeking, but as expressing. You still feel. You still act. You still live, but you do not live from the sense of needing to arrive. You live as presence itself. Each moment stands alone, not because it is isolated, but because it is complete. Even your suffering is different here. It no longer defines you. It is no longer your personal failure. It is weather moving through the sky. It is felt fully, but not believed. It is allowed, but not identified with. You no longer need to interpret every experience as part of a journey. You are not on your way. You are what the way passes through. The path did its job. It brought you here. But now, it is time to rest in the truth that was never distant. To be still in what needs no fixing. To see that all the maps you followed were drawn on the surface of something that never moved. That something is you. Not the you you've imagined. Not the name. The form. The story. The quiet, formless awareness in which everything appears and disappears. Let the path fall away now. Let the seeker fall away. Let the journey fall away. They are not wrong. They are not bad. They are just no longer necessary. There is no further step to take, no deeper insight to gain, no higher state to reach. What you are is already here, already whole, already free. There is nothing to seek because nothing is missing. There is nowhere to go because you never left. This is the place where all paths end. And in that ending, something new begins. Not as movement, but as being. Not as story, but as presence. Not as someone, but as what holds everyone. What holds everything. What holds this. And this is enough. Chapter 4. When presence remembers itself. There comes a moment when the mind grows quiet, not because you silenced it, but because it no longer holds your loyalty. A moment when the thoughts still appear, the emotions still move, the world still spins, but none of it touches you in the same way. You are not apart from it, but you are no longer caught in it. You are simply here, not as a someone in control of experience, not as a seeker moving through a path, but as presence itself, aware, still, untouched. This is not something you create. This is something that reveals itself when effort dissolves. It is not the result of doing. It is the absence of trying. Presence does not arrive. It remembers. It does not shout. It returns. It was here when you were a child, staring at the sky without knowing what sky meant. It was here when you were lost in wonder, before the story of who you were became so convincing. It was here when you laughed without thinking, when you breathed without controlling, when you loved without guarding. You have tasted this countless times and called it fleeting, but presence was never fleeting. Only your attention was. To remember presence is not to remember a memory. It is to remember yourself, not as a person, but as the stillness beneath the person, as the awareness beneath the thought, as the quiet beneath the voice that narrates your life. Presence has never needed to be improved. It has never asked for validation. It does not rise and fall with your moods. It does not depend on your achievements. It is not concerned with whether you feel spiritual or lost. Presence is what sees all of that. It sees and does not cling. It watches and does not judge. It holds and does not demand. When presence remembers itself, the idea of self begins to soften. The boundaries between inner and outer dissolve. You no longer meet the world as an observer standing apart, but as the space in which all experience arises. You no longer relate to others as identities to decode or manage, but as extensions of the same presence that looks through your own eyes. It is not a mystical insight. It is what becomes obvious when the mind steps aside. This remembrance cannot be taught. It cannot be willed into existence, but it can be allowed. It can be noticed. It can be welcomed. The moment you stop trying to find presence, it begins to shine. The moment you let go of the idea that you are someone outside of it, presence opens its eyes through you. It was never far. It was only waiting to be seen by itself. You may ask, how do I stay in presence? But that question belongs to the mind that still believes it is separate. Presence does not need you to stay. You are already it. What leaves is not presence. What leaves is attention. And even when attention wanders, presence remains. Watching, holding, embracing. You do not lose it. You do not fall out of it. You simply forget to notice it. And even that forgetting is held within it. Presence is not an experience to grasp. It is the space in which all experience happens. You will not find it through analysis. You will not reach it through effort. You find it in the pause, in the breath, in the moment you stop trying to become and simply allow yourself to be. You will not know it by the mind's confirmation. You will know it by the absence of grasping. When presence remembers itself, nothing changes and everything does. The world remains as it is. Sounds, sensations, challenges, stories. But the relationship to it all transforms. The one who was resisting disappears. The one who needed control relaxes. The one who thought it had to protect itself lets go. And in that letting go, peace arises, not as something added, but as something revealed. You are not an object in presence. You are not a character being watched by awareness. You are the awareness. The idea of a you separate from presence is the final illusion. There is no subject and object. There is only being, and that being is not personal. It is not local. It is not bound by your name, your face, your story. It is vast, open, alive. Presence does not argue with what is. It has no agenda. It welcomes pain and pleasure, light and shadow. It does not cling to comfort. It does not run from discomfort. It holds both with equal openness. And in that openness, there is deep rest. Not the rest of sleeping, but the rest of not needing to become. The rest of being what already is. You may forget this again. The mind may pull you back into its stories. The emotions may flood you with old patterns. That is not a failure. That is the rhythm. The wave rises. The wave falls. But beneath the wave, the ocean does not move. Beneath the noise, presence waits. And in any moment, no matter how lost you feel, you can return. Not by climbing, not by fixing, just by noticing. Presence is not somewhere else. It is not for another time. It is not for another version of you. It is what breathes you now. It is what sees through your eyes now. It is what holds this moment exactly as it is. You do not need to earn it. You only need to stop turning away. When presence remembers itself, there is no longer anything to protect, no longer anything to prove. You do not need to be right. You do not need to be seen. You do not need to be safe. You are already held. You are already known. You are already enough, not as a self, but as the presence that gives rise to all selves. And that is where peace lives. Not in what happens, but in what watches. Not in what you achieve, but in what you are. Let the remembering happen now. Let the thought of you fall, silent. Let the breath return to its source. Let the moment be enough. And feel what remains. That quiet. That stillness, that aliveness, that is you. That is presence. Remembered. Chapter 5. What cannot be left behind? There is something in you that has never come and will never go. It has watched every stage of your becoming, every transformation, every unraveling, without ever being changed itself. It was there before. The first breath. It will be there after the last. It does not belong to your body or your thoughts, yet it has never been apart from them. It has witnessed every joy, every loss, every identity you've worn. And while all of those have shifted, faded, collapsed, or evolved, this has remained. Silent, still, constant. You cannot name it, for it is before language. You cannot shape it, for it holds all form. You cannot separate from it, because it is what sees the illusion of separation. What cannot be left behind is not an achievement. It is not something found in time. You do not grow into it. You remember it, or rather, it remembers itself through you. All your seeking, your practices, your breakdowns and breakthroughs, they were not leading you towards something new. They were exhausting everything that could be lost, so that what cannot be lost might finally be seen. You have tried to become something, someone. You have strived for purity, for freedom, for light, and what you sought was never far. It only waited for you to stop and see that it was what had always been looking. You are not the path. You are not even the one walking. You are the ground beneath every step, the sky behind every moment, the field in which time rises and falls. And nothing you have ever done has touched this. No shame has stained it. No failure has weakened it. No story has defined it. This is the indestructible presence. It cannot be seen with the eye, and yet it sees through every eye. It is not your spirit. It is not your soul. It is not your essence. It is the place before all those words. It is the silence that watches them rise and fall like waves. At some point, the self you have maintained starts to feel like a weight, not because it is wrong, but because it is too small for what you truly are. You tire of protecting an image. You grow weary of becoming someone. You begin to notice how much of your suffering comes not from life itself, but from the idea of who you think you are. And when that idea begins to loosen, what remains is not confusion. It is space. It is quiet. It is a peace that does not come from having answers, but from no longer needing them. What cannot be left behind does not speak in words. It does not explain itself. It does not reassure the mind. But when you fall into it, sometimes gently, sometimes by collapse, you know, not as a belief, but as a knowing that needs no proof. You know because you feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the stillness that surrounds even your most restless moments. It is not separate from your pain. It is what holds your pain. It is not apart from your joy. It is what allows joy to bloom without clinging. You may ask how to live from this, but that question belongs to the part of you still trying to master life. This cannot be mastered. It is not a state you enter. It is what holds all states. You live from it not by effort, but by rest. Not by doing, but by being. You don't need to remember it every second. You don't need to hold it like a possession. It holds you, whether you remember or not. There will be times when the storm returns, when fear speaks loud, when anger moves through the body, when grief closes the heart. Do not make these moments wrong. Do not imagine that presence has been lost. What cannot be left behind is not fragile. It does not hide when the world becomes dark. It is the space in which darkness appears. It is the light that makes the dark visible. It is there, steady, even when you shake. You have spent so long trying to make yourself whole, but what you are has never been fractured. You have tried to find meaning, but what you are is meaning before any story. You have tried to get closer to the sacred, but what you are is what makes anything sacred to begin with. You cannot be more this. You cannot be less this, and nothing that happens can touch it. This is not a spiritual state. It is not a peak. It is not bliss or emptiness or clarity. It is the unmovable ground beneath all of those experiences. You will know it not by how it feels, but by the silence it brings, by the absence of striving, by the depth of rest, by the simplicity of being here, without needing to improve or escape. Let the layers fall. not by force, but by exhaustion. Let what you are not collapse. Let the stories dissolve. Let the search lose its urgency. And see what has remained through all of it. That which cannot be left behind is not waiting. It is already here. It is already breathing you. It is already living this moment. You do not have to hold it. You only have to stop clinging to what you are not. And when you do, not through effort, but through willingness, you'll see that everything you feared losing was never yours. Everything you hoped to find was never missing. Everything you've become was only ever a costume. What cannot be left behind is the naked truth, and it needs no name. Now breathe, be still, and let this be enough. Chapter 6. The Light You Forgot to See. There is a light so quiet, so constant, that you forgot it was even there. Not because it went anywhere, but because you learned to look past it. In your searching, you looked outward. In your longing, you looked forward. In your healing, you looked backward. But this light does not live in direction. It does not belong to time. It does not shine for the eyes. It is not seen by effort. It is not lit by hope. It is what remains when there is no more looking. You were taught to chase the light, to earn it, to reach for it with words and worthiness. You imagined it as a distant flame, hidden behind complexity, behind spiritual mastery, behind versions of yourself that never quite arrived. You searched with devotion. You read. You sat in silence. You shaped your breath and tried to quiet the noise. But all the while, the light remained, closer than breath, deeper than feeling, untouched by the one doing the seeking. It was not that you failed to find it. It was that you expected it to look different. You thought it would be glorious, loud, life-changing. You thought it would transform you into something purer, brighter, better. But the light you forgot to see is not here to decorate you. It does not care about your success. It is not interested in becoming. It is interested only in being. It is not an experience. It is what holds all experience. This light is not limited to joy. It does not disappear when pain comes. It is not the opposite of darkness. It is the field in which light and dark play. It is what lets them move and change. It is what allows contrast, and because it does not take sides, it cannot be damaged. No amount of confusion can dim it. No belief can strengthen it. It does not respond to your effort. It reveals itself in your surrender. The forgetting is not your failure. It is part of the dream. You were meant to forget, to believe you were something else. The light allowed you to believe it wasn't there. It allowed you to try, to search, to fall apart. It allowed your pain, not because it wanted you to suffer, but because it trusted that the silence beneath it all would not be lost. You did not fail by becoming a person. You did not lose by living a life. The forgetting was never final. The light you forgot to see is seeing right now, through these words, behind the thoughts forming in your mind, beneath the story of who you are. It is not separate from your doubt. It is not apart from your ache. It is not behind your eyes. It is what sees through them. You cannot find it by force. You find it by noticing what was never hidden. This noticing is not a technique. It is not a task. It is a softening, a melting, a return. You stop trying to wake up, and you realize you were never asleep. You stop trying to be whole, and you realize you were never broken. You stop trying to touch the divine, and you realize the divine has always been touching you, not with fire and thunder, but with breath, with space, with silence. Even now, the light is here. It holds your discomfort. It holds your confusion. It holds your effort to understand these words. It holds your resistance. It holds your surrender. and it does not prefer one over the other. It does not withdraw when you forget. It does not celebrate when you remember. It simply is. And it is you, not the image, not the identity, not the thinker, but the pure awareness watching it all. There is nothing more sacred than this noticing, not because it is rare, but because it is real. There is no technique more powerful than pausing, no mantra more precise than silence, no journey more complete than the stillness of now. What you longed for has always been breathing you. It does not need your praise. It only needs your openness. This light does not need fixing. It does not evolve. It is the stillness that existed before the first story, before the first moment, before the first breath. And it is here, now, untouched by all that has happened. You cannot claim it because you are it. You cannot separate from it because it is what makes separation possible. You cannot leave it behind because it is what follows you into every moment, even when you forget. And when you see it, not with the eyes, not with the mind, but with presence. It is not dramatic. It is not a climax. It is a return so gentle that you almost miss it. A remembering so familiar it feels like nothing. But in that nothing, there is everything. In that silence, there is truth. In that light, there is rest. Let the light be enough now. Not as something to become, but as what you already are. Let it rise behind your effort. Let it remain beneath your fear. Let it breathe you. Let it hold the whole human mess without needing it to change. The light you forgot to see has never stopped seeing you. You are not moving toward it. You are falling back into it. And it catches you every time. Chapter 7. Beyond the Edges of Becoming. There is a point in every path where becoming begins to unravel. Not because it failed, but because it did what it was meant to do. It exhausted you. It carried you through teachings, practices, identities, improvements. It gave you reasons to rise each day, to reach, to grow. And eventually, it showed you its limit. Not in frustration, but in grace. Because what you are looking for does not exist at the end of becoming. It lives beyond it. Becoming is rooted in the belief that something is missing, that if you learn enough, heal enough, awaken enough, you will finally arrive. But all arriving is still movement. All becoming is still bound to time. And what you are cannot be reached through time. What you are is not waiting for you on the other side of transformation. It is already present, already whole, already untouched. And when the illusion of becoming loses its grip, you do not find a better version of yourself. You find the absence of the self that needed to be better. The identity that wants to evolve is not the problem. It's just not the whole truth. It was never meant to carry you home. It was only ever a temporary vehicle, a costume worn by the infinite to play at being incomplete. You have played this role beautifully. You've searched with sincerity. You've given yourself to growth. But now you are standing at the edge. And beyond the edge of becoming, something waits. Not another form. Not another answer. Just stillness. Just this. This stillness is not passive. It is not empty. It is the fullness that requires nothing, the peace that comes not from solving, but from releasing the need to solve. You do not become this stillness. You recognize it as what's always been beneath the movement. It does not need to be cultivated. It needs to be remembered. Or more truthfully, it remembers itself when the noise fades, and the noise does not need to be silenced. You do not need to perfect your mind. You only need to stop believing that your thoughts are telling you who you are. You only need to see that the desire to become is itself a story appearing in something far more spacious, something that does not change, something that does not judge, something that does not even need you to wake up, because it has never been asleep. Beyond the edges of becoming, you do not find what you were looking for. You realize there was never anything missing. The sense of lack was a misunderstanding, a ripple on the surface of stillness. You thought the ripple was you, but you are the ocean. You always were. And no ripple, no wave, no storm could ever change that. Here, the desire to become transforms. It does not disappear, but it softens. It loses urgency. It becomes movement without struggle, expression without grasping. You still live, you still speak, you still feel, but the tension in the doing is gone. You are no longer trying to get somewhere. You are no longer holding a version of yourself together. You are no longer postponing peace. You see clearly now, what you are is not becoming anything. It is being. And being does not need to prove itself. It does not need a path. It does not need recognition. It is silent, spacious, whole. It allows everything, including the desire to improve. But it is not moved by that desire. It watches. It waits. It holds. And as you rest in this, something ancient returns. A kind of innocence. A kind of wonder. You stop needing every moment to mean something. You stop trying to extract worth from your actions. You stop measuring your progress. And in the absence of all that effort, life begins to breathe on its own again. Not as a project, not as a task, but as mystery. This mystery is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived. Not with the mind, but with the heart. Not through control, but through surrender. You do not become one with it. You see that you were never two. There was no distance, no process, no journey, only a temporary forgetting, and now a quiet remembering. You are not a body-seeking spirit. You are not a soul-seeking freedom. You are the freedom in which soul and body appear. You are not a self-finding presence. You are the presence watching the idea of self come and go. And beyond that watching, there is no name, no form, no need, only being. Let this being be enough. Not because it completes a journey, but because it ends the need for one. Let it hold your joy and your pain, your clarity and your confusion. Let it be vast enough for all of it. Let yourself fall back into what was never lost. Let the effort rest. Let the light return. Let life move through you without the weight of becoming. You are not here to arrive. You are here to dissolve, to soften, to surrender into what has always held you. And what holds you is not asking for anything. It is not waiting for you to improve. It only waits for you to stop reaching, to stop proving, to stop seeking. Beyond the edges of becoming, there is no goal, no standard, no perfection. There is only this breath, this moment, this silent awareness that needs nothing added, nothing taken away. And that is what you are. Chapter 8. The Breath That Holds the World. Long before words began describing the world, breath was there, rising, falling, appearing without effort, leaving without noise. It does not ask to be noticed, yet it is the rhythm that carries all of this. It moves through every cell, through every thought, through every tear and laugh and silence. You did not create it. You do not control it. You are shaped by it. And beyond the physical movement of lungs and air, there is a deeper breath, one not bound by form, not limited by body, not separate from anything it holds. That breath is not yours. It is what you are. The breath that holds the world is not about inhaling and exhaling. It is about the space that breathes all things into being. The space that is never crowded, even when full. the space that allows birth and death, presence and absence, light and shadow. You have never been apart from this breath. It moves through you even when you forget it, even when you believe yourself to be small, broken, or lost. It does not pull away. It simply continues. Quiet, patient, vast. You learned to breathe with tension, to grip the air as if it might leave you. You learned to control, to manage, to make something happen with each breath. But breath was never yours to own. It was a gift never offered as possession. You cannot hold it, and you cannot push it away. It reminds you of the truth that control is illusion. It reminds you that surrender is already happening, whether you choose it or not. This deeper breath does not begin or end in the chest. It begins nowhere. It ends nowhere. It is the pulse of presence, the rhythm of now. It breathes mountains and trees, oceans and stars, people and silence. It is not part of life. It is life, not the mechanics of biology, but the essence behind all form. It is the invisible thread that connects everything. And when you pause to feel it, the idea of me begins to dissolve. You are not the one breathing. You are the breath. You are not the one moving through space. You are the space moving everything. You are not a name carried by breath. You are what carries the name and lets it go. The moment you stop trying to define the experience, it reveals itself, not with answers, but with simplicity, not with intensity, but with peace. The breath that holds the world does not care about your plans. It is not interested in your strategies or your fears. It does not punish you for forgetting. It does not reward you for remembering. It is constant, not as repetition, but as presence. When you become still enough to notice it, a softness opens. The mind does not need to understand it. The body does not need to master it. All that is required is attention, and even that is not demanded, only invited. Sometimes this breath is felt as spaciousness, sometimes as silence, sometimes as warmth in the center of the chest, sometimes as nothing at all. You cannot define it. You cannot teach it, but you can let yourself fall into it. You can let the tension drop. Let the story pause. Let the effort rest. And what you will find is that you were never carrying anything alone. The breath holds all of it. The joy, the heartbreak, the seeking, the forgetting. It holds you in your sleep. It holds you in your despair. It holds you when you think no one else does, and it asks for nothing in return. It is not given to the good and withheld from the broken. It does not choose sides. It simply is, always, forever, in all things. To live from this breath is not to float above life. It is to sink deeply into it, to stop separating spirit from experience, to stop dividing the sacred from the ordinary. When you breathe from this place, everything becomes enough. This chair, this sound, this feeling. There is no longer a need to escape or improve or rush. There is only the fullness of what is. And that fullness includes everything: confusion, clarity, anger, gratitude, longing, stillness. None of it needs to be pushed away. None of it needs to be labeled. You are not the curator of your experience. You are the space in which it blooms. You are the breath in which it rests. Even in chaos, the breath remains. Even in grief, it stays. You can scream, weep, fall apart, and still, it is there, holding every fracture, every word, every silence. And when the storm passes, when the identity reshapes, when the story finds a new chapter, it is still breathing, not because it waited, but because it never left. The breath that holds the world is not separate from who you are. It is who you are when all else is gone. When the masks fall, when the titles dissolve, when the future is no longer imagined, you stand there, not as an individual claiming the breath, but as breath itself, finally undivided. Let yourself return now, not with force, not with thought, just by noticing. Let yourself rest in what has never demanded your strength. Let yourself breathe without trying. And in that letting go, feel the weight lift, not because it was removed, but because it was never yours. This breath is not teaching, it is remembering. It is the soft reminder that life is already whole, that presence is already here, that you were never apart from what is true. You only needed to feel the breath that has been holding you from the very beginning. Chapter 9. Where you were never missing. You have wandered far in thought, in time, in effort. You have crossed emotional landscapes, climbed spiritual mountains, descended into shadows, soared into light. You have sought something, someone, some truth that would finally settle the ache in your chest. But underneath all that movement, there has always been a quiet place, a stillness untouched by your searching, a space that never moved, never changed, never judged, never demanded. And in that space, you were never missing. The sense of absence was only ever a trick of the mind, a mirage built from comparison, from memory, from identity. You were told, and then you believed, that you had to become something, reach something, attain something in order to be enough. And so you began to strive. You wore masks. You played roles. You built temples in your mind and tried to enter them with effort. All the while, what you longed for was already breathing through you. You cannot go back to this place because you never left it. You cannot earn it because it has never withheld itself. You cannot perfect yourself to become worthy of it because worth was never the question. You are not a mistake trying to become divine. You are the divine pretending to be a mistake. Here, in this moment, if you pause long enough, you may feel it, not as something new, not as an event, but as the absence of resistance, the absence of effort, the return of attention to what has always been. The part of you that doesn't need fixing, doesn't need naming, doesn't need proof. It doesn't speak in words. It doesn't need to be explained. It simply is. And in that isness, everything is allowed. You do not need to stop your thoughts. You do not need to feel peaceful. You do not need to silence your mind or open your heart or align your energy. All of that may happen, or it may not. It doesn't matter here, because here, you are already home, already held, already whole. This is where you were never missing, not because you were always perfect, but because you were never separate. The sense of being apart, being lost, being broken, it was never more than a temporary forgetting, a flicker in the dream. Even at your most lost, you were still held by this presence. Even at your most confused, you were still within it. You are not outside of truth, knocking on the door. You are the door. You are the silence it opens into. All the questions that plagued you begin to dissolve, not because you answered them, but because you no longer need to. You see, they were born of the same illusion. Who am I? What is my purpose? How do I awaken? These questions lose their weight when you stop asking from absence. When you realize that the one who is asking is already whole, already here, already home. This is not a state to maintain. It is not a high to sustain. It is not an enlightenment to possess. It is a recognition so simple the mind cannot grasp it. It is the turning of attention from the search to the seer, from the story to the space it lives in. It is not mystical. It is not dramatic. It is the quiet joy of no longer needing to be more than what you already are. You may still struggle. You may still forget. You may still get caught in thought and story, But you will know something now. Something you didn't fully know before. You will know that underneath all that noise, the ground has never moved. The sky has never closed. The presence has never abandoned you. And that knowing will stay, even when it is not in your awareness. It will hold you in your darkest hour. It will whisper to you through the most ordinary day. It will guide you not by instruction, but by reminder. Gentle, constant, true. You are not the character in the story. You are the awareness in which the story arises. You are not your history. You are not your image. You are not your thoughts, your beliefs, your wins, your losses. You are what sees all of that come and go. You are the silence into which every sound falls. You are the space in which everything is allowed. There is great freedom in seeing this. Not freedom as escape, but freedom as reality. You are not trapped. You were never trapped. You only believed in a cage made of concepts. You only believed that something was wrong, that you were apart, that something needed to change. But now you see, not because someone told you, but because you remembered what never left. You are not missing. You are not lacking. You are not separate. What you are is so close, so constant, so intimate that it is almost impossible to recognize. But the moment you stop searching for it, it begins to shine. The moment you stop believing the thought of yourself, the truth of yourself stands clear. Let this be enough, this breath, this presence, this moment. Let it hold all that you are. Let it remind you that there was never anything missing, never anything broken, never anything wrong. There was only the forgetting, and now the remembering, the silent recognition that this, just this, is home. Chapter 10. The Space That Breathes You. You were taught to believe you are the one doing the breathing, that each inhale is yours to control, each exhale a product of your will. But before the thought of control, before the identity of a breather, there was breath. Not the rise and fall of lungs, but the invisible space that breathes everything into being. It has no location, no boundary, no face. Yet it breathes galaxies and grasses, oceans and children, birth and death, sound and silence. And it breathes you, not as a separate act, but as part of its own motionless motion. The space that breathes you is not external. It does not look down on you or move around you. It is what you are, not the person, not the mind, not the form, but the open, empty fullness from which all form arises. You are not inside it. You are it. Forgotten, disguised, remembered, revealed. In your moments of stillness, you may have tasted this. The pause between thoughts, the hush after release, the depth inside a breath where identity fades and something quieter takes its place. You may have called it peace or presence or grace, but it has no name. It doesn't need one. It never left. It never began. And it will not end. It is the beginning and end of everything that begins and ends. The unmoving witness of all becoming. The stories you've told, the roles you've played, the things you've feared and desired, all of them danced inside this space, and yet none of them defined it. You've mistaken yourself for the dancer, forgetting you are also the stage, the silence, the spotlight, the presence that allows it all. You believe the shape you wear is what you are, but the space that breathes, you wears many shapes and clings to none. You have worked hard to hold yourself together, to fix what you thought was broken, to polish what you thought was dull. But all along, the one doing the work was imagined. The true self needed no work. It needed only to be seen, not by the eyes, but by the stillness behind the eyes. The space that sees without wanting, without grasping, without naming. That's where you are. That's what you are. You do not live in the world. The world lives in you, not you, the character, but you, the space that holds it all, the space into which every tree grows, every wind flows, every sound echoes. You do not die. What dies is the form, the memory, the name. What remains is the space, unchanged. What remains is what breathed you into this life and will breathe you out of it when the time comes. To know this is not to become more spiritual. It is not to achieve something. It is to stop pretending, to stop delaying, to stop trading what is infinite for what is fleeting. You do not need more knowledge. You do not need more practice. You need only the willingness to rest, to let go of the reaching, to open your eyes and see that there is nothing behind the curtain, because the curtain was only ever a thought. And when you do, when you truly let the illusion go, there is no fanfare, no conclusion. There is only simplicity. There is only presence. There is only what has always been breathing you, now without resistance, now without confusion, now without the effort of being someone. In this space, everything is allowed: sadness, joy, confusion, clarity. You do not rise above life. You fall into it deeply, tenderly, honestly. You feel fully. You live completely. But you do not cling. You do not fight. You do not try to shape what is into what it should be. You simply allow. And in that allowing, freedom is no longer an idea. It becomes your nature. You are not the doer. You are the done. You are not the finder. You are what cannot be lost. You are not the breath. You are the space that breathes. Let it be enough now. Not someday. Not when you're healed or enlightened or certain. Now. In this breath. In this moment. Let the stories fall. Let the effort fade. Let the space that breathes you rise again, not as something separate, but as the simple, silent truth that has always waited for your return. And in that return, nothing is added, nothing is achieved. But something is remembered. Something that changes everything without needing to change anything. You are already what you seek. You are already whole. You are already home. You are the space that breathes you. Thank you for listening.